I think I'm realising that Animal Farm might have been the first Kelsey Grammer film that I ever saw. That's certainly why I decided to rewatch it. I'm reviewing every Kelsey Grammer film, but I had seen this before, maybe 20 years ago, possibly. And part of my memory was not that strong with the film, but there were certainly things that I remembered really well. This was released in 1999. It's directed by John Stephenson, written by Alan James and Martyn Burke, based on Animal Farm by George Orwell. And we have a cast and voice cast including Pete Postlethwaite, Julia Ormond, Kelsey Grammer, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Great cast and voice cast. We have Patrick Stewart as Napoleon, who is quite an interesting character. And the reason I watched this back in the day was because we were reading the book at school and then watched the film. And I will say I understand it a lot more now than I did. I got the basic concept growing up. It's an allegory for the Russian Revolution. And the farm animals have decided to revolt against the humans. But then things are not going the way some of the animals expected when a new leader decides to take control. And I don't want to say too much more than that. Obviously, if you're familiar with the Russian Revolution, you can grasp the basic concept. I wasn't at that age. I would have been about 13, maybe 14. And my knowledge of the Russian Revolution was even worse than it is now. I'm by no means an expert now, but I certainly have a better understanding of it. And that meant that it was a much more interesting experience this time round. However, I will say that it was also not as great an experience this time round, as I found bits of it to be quite slow. I wouldn't say it was tremendously slow. I never necessarily felt bored, but certainly there were times when I was just waiting for something to happen. But then things did happen. The good bits are very good. They're either very shocking, they're very dramatic, or they're quite emotional. If you're an animal person, if you're an animal fan, there are moments that are quite emotional. And that's one of the aspects I remember most well from being a child. The other thing I remembered really well was the whole milk and apples thing. I remember watching this and then going home and having milk and an apple. And I don't like apples. They hurt my teeth. I'm not a fan. But certainly that was a big takeaway for me at the time. I think it's a strong story. I can't remember how accurate it is to the book. I haven't read the book in about 20 years. I have no idea if it's a close adaptation or not. If anybody can comment on that, please feel free to share. Visually, it's quite appealing. The animals look brilliant. The animals are talking characters, of course. And the voice acting is great. Kelsey Grammer voices Snowball, who coincidentally was one of my favourites. I didn't know who Kelsey Grammer was back in the day. So for me, it's a slightly different experience this time. And in general, I'd say it's worth watching. It's quite powerful. It is, as I said, a little slow at times. And I think the target audience is maybe a little bit murky. Because, well, as I said, because we were reading the book at school and discussing it, I had a basic understanding of it. But I think if I were to watch it without having read the book at that age, I might not have picked up everything. It might not have been completely clear what they were getting at. Maybe, I don't know. I could be underestimating my abilities at the time, but certainly my knowledge of the Russian Revolution and understanding the allegory wouldn't have been as good. But for an adult viewer, I think there are bits that are maybe a little slow. So the audience is kind of murky. It is, according to IMDb, a PG. And in general, I don't think it's not possible for children to follow it, but obviously I don't think they'll fully grasp what's going on, certainly if they're very young children. It's otherwise just a dramatic and emotional film about some talking animals, which, if that's their takeaway, absolutely fine. So, it's a good film. It's not as enjoyable as I remembered, but I also got more out of it this time as well. So, do with that information what you will. Ultimately, it's a decent film. I can't remember the book precisely, so I don't know if it's a very close adaptation, but I feel like it is. I don't remember it being that different, but as I said, if anybody can confirm or deny that, please feel free to do so. Visually looks quite good, the animals look great, the acting and voice acting all very good, so I do recommend it. I think it's something that's worth watching at least once, and I have now watched it twice. Maybe I'll watch it a third time at some point, but I doubt it. I think isn't there an animated version? Am I lying? Am I making that up? I'm not lying. There is a 1954 animation, and I might actually prioritise watching that sooner rather than later, because that could be quite interesting. I don't think I've seen that. I don't have any recollection of watching that. So I definitely recommend the 1999 version. It's not as solid as I remember, but I still think it's a very good experience. And in general, I'd say it's a film that probably everybody should watch at least once. It's certainly quite an experience and one that I'm happy to recommend.